This episode of the Senior Rehab Podcast is sponsored by the Academy of Geriatric Physical Therapy. AGPT's mission is to further your ability to provide best practice physical therapy and to advocate for optimal aging. Falls are a big deal with our patient population, but do you find yourself struggling to manage or even prevent falls with your patients? You should check out AGPT's clinical guidance statement on the management of falls in community-dwelling older adults. This paper gives you a clear direction, recommendations, and action steps so you can help your patients. You can get this article for free and learn about how the AGPT can further your clinical practice at geriatricspt.org/SRP. Hit me!
This is a Senior Rehab Podcast, the podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Senior Rehab Podcast. This is your host, Dustin Jones. This is this month's Game Changers episode. A few of us gathered to talk about the role of blood flow restriction training to mitigate sarcopenia, Dynapenia, and enhance clinical recovery. So for those that aren't aware of the Game Changers program, this is the group of dedicated clinicians that supports SRP. They give monthly, and what they get in return is an awesome Redefine Old coffee mug that I'm drinking out of right now. They also get access to the Game Changers private Facebook group where we share resources, where we discuss about this month's meetup. Every month we discuss a pertinent article to our work. We all read it. We come together on the first Monday of every month, and then we discuss it. And then we record a little bit of it, and we play it on the podcast. But this is a great way to read, research, to get other people's perspectives, to discuss it with others. It's been really helpful. I know for me, I've been reading a lot more than what I typically would, just because I have that sense of accountability with the groups of the Game Changers. So if you are gaining from this podcast, from the SRP, and you want to kind of take things to the next level, I highly encourage you to check out the Game Changers program. It can be found at seniorrehabproject.com/join. And even if you don't want to join the Game Changers, you can still support our efforts here at SRP by going to that link. We utilize this platform called Patreon, which allows you, the consumer, to be able to support the creators of art or music or podcasts, for example. And any bit counts. I mean, it's not free to run, this program, and definitely takes a lot of time. All of us, invest a lot of time and effort into creating this stuff for y'all. We enjoy it, but we would love your support. So you can find out all that information if you want to, join the Game Changers or just support the efforts that we're doing. It'd be greatly appreciated by me and all the other teammates of SRP. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com/join. There will be a link in the show notes as well. So let's get into this month's Game Changers meetup with who we have. Jamie Lowy was there, Alyssa Kuhn, Stephen Babcock, Kevin Brown was lurking in the background a little bit. We had a good conversation about blood flow restriction training and its implementation with the older adult population. Enjoy. The role of blood flow restriction training to mitigate sarcopenia and Dynapenia and enhance clinical recovery. This is in Techniques in Orthopedics. I'm going to read about the journal. So Techniques in Orthopedics is a peer-reviewed journal that provides information on the latest orthopedic procedures as they are devised and used by leading orthopedic surgeons. Articles also report on orthopedic technology as well as relevant health policy, legal, and financial issues. Techniques in Orthopedics publishes 4 times a year. Issues are organized around a symposium on a single topic and integrate clinical and scientific concepts. Each issue is assigned a guest editor who is engaged with a broad view of topics, including unresolved issues, evolving surgical techniques, and research activities. So when I read that, I'm like, holy crap, orthopedic surgeons, this is probably a big journal. I don't know how many people, they have to read their stuff, but just to give some context to the potential readership or following of this journal. And I'm basing this solely on social media. So, that's about as valid as you can get, right? How many followers and Facebook likes someone has. So, for example, the home health section, with the help of Sean Hagee, Troy Mead, Monique, they have 1,400 Facebook likes, their page. They have 1,940 Twitter followers, just to give you reference. Now, the sports section for physical therapy has 5,400 Facebook likes and 35,800 followers on Twitter. So big difference in the home health section to the sports section. Now, this publication, the Techniques in Orthopedics, has 1,300 Facebook likes and 118 Twitter followers. Now, I don't want to say how many people read the article based on those numbers, but that made me think, okay, not every orthopedic surgeon is getting this. They're not reading it. They may have a smaller audience than a lot of PT journals based on that, which is, I don't know, someone call me out if that's a terrible correlation to make, but I couldn't find any numbers on this stuff. Have y'all heard of this journal before? Techniques in Orthopedics?
I have not.
I haven't either.
Nothing. Yeah, so, but we do know the audience, which is orthopedic surgeons. Jamie, do you have anything to add or any thoughts that you had about the publication itself? What did you all think? Just general thoughts or big takeaways? Because this, wasn't necessarily a research study, but just kind of a review of the evidence and almost like a pitch for BFR. But any red flags? We'll start there for you all that you came across.
One of my questions was, how did they do it? Did they all have I know there's equipment you can buy for BFR, but one of my questions was, how did they actually implement it? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they talked about it in the course that you took. I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's heavy in the course. But I didn't go through and check each reference that was mentioned in this article, but there is a lot of variability in a lot of the research in terms of parameters. So the course, the Owens Recovery Science course, talks a lot about limb occlusion pressure and actually measuring that with a tourniquet, the Delphi tourniquet that actually has a Doppler put in to that piece of equipment. And they go off specific percentages, and that's kind of what they believe, and which is informed by evidence. But then I would not be surprised if some of these articles use different pressures, or maybe not even the Delphi tourniquet, and maybe even going off a calculation based on systolic blood pressure. I've seen that as well. People going, X percent over systolic blood pressure. So I think there's a lot of variety in the evidence in terms of how it's...
Yeah, it does show in one of the teams. Okay.
From the course that I took, they definitely pushed the Delphi unit hard for a couple of reasons. That it's wide, so you're increasing the surface area. The cuffs are narrower at the bottom, so it kind of fits the limb really well. It has that Doppler unit in it, so you are not guessing. It's very calculated, and it's $5,000. Freaking expensive.
Okay.
So yeah. So I guess because they talked about it a little bit, but they didn't paint too clear of a picture. So what it looks like in practice or in the course, because I still haven't used it clinically yet, is you're sitting still, you hit the button on the machine, and it determines the limb occlusion pressure. And so then it knows what, how much pressure it's going to use during the exercise. So it determines the limb occlusion pressure, and then it will squeeze your arm or leg again at a certain percentage of that limb occlusion pressure that you set based on parameters. And then you typically will do a high rep set of whatever exercise it is. And I can't remember exactly the thought process behind that, but if I recall, it was basically trying to create that anaerobic state quickly. So in the course, we did 30 reps, straight leg raise, no weight. And then you go into your, 3 sets of whatever with that exercise. Typically, you're only going to have that thing constricted, roughly 4 to 5 minutes at a time, and then it'll release. And that's a big thing. It's not like people's limbs are restricted for, an hour, like in surgery. It's just for like 5 minutes at a time, and then it releases. And so you get some relief from that. But they'll typically just run through, some routines that we do, but they just throw on that tourniquet and they'll lower the resistance. And they do a lot of closed chain stuff, squats, lunges, different stepping, walking. It's just your imagination is the only limiting factor, really. So it's pretty wild.
Okay.
Now, you all as clinicians, when you read this, what particular patients came to mind that you thought, this could be pretty good with? Like any specific like scenarios or patients that you have right now?
I know for me, it mentioned the post-op patient.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like I work on an outpatient, there's quite a few joint replacements and that kind of thing. It kind of brought to light it may be an older patient who may not be as at risk for sarcopenia, but given the post-op status, like it can happen pretty quickly. It's kind of like hit a light bulb, like, you know what, maybe not everyone in that age group, but like in this case, like it's even more apparent. But for people that might have like restrictions, whether it's, a weight-bearing status restriction or, they just can't lift a lot or their quad strength is just, going to lag in the knee. For someone like that to get a little more of the intensity level versus like having to, put on weights or do like squats with weights kind of thing.
Yeah. That
kind of stood out to me just from reading, at least there's a portion of the article that mentioned that.
Mm-hmm. That was interesting. This, where was it? It's page 1. It's like the third paragraph down, like 4 lines down. Consequently, a preoperative patient may not meet the criterion for sarcopenia or dynapenia upon initial consultation, but the metabolic stress and acute musculoskeletal insult that occur following many orthopedic procedures may cause patients to lose muscle mass and strength, leading to a secondary progression of sarcopenia and dynapenia. Yeah, that is an interesting point that I don't think I ever think about. I see that person in front of me, but I wonder if I truly have a grasp of what their functional status was, or their functional status was, pre-op compared to now, and just how that surgery can be such a slippery slope for people. And home health, that, definitely a lot of, we'll have post-ops that aren't necessarily the most successful that, we may be seeing them, a year down the road. Because just knowing that will inform your practice already in outpatient. Like what does that make you think you need to do differently or improve on, even like given right now in outpatient?
I guess like typically you might give someone, the standard is you might just do like straight leg raises or side hip abduction without too much resistance, just because there may be non-weight bearing or kind of starting at a lower level. I think just knowing that we have them in clinics, they're available for us to use the BFR units. We have the same Delphi units. I know for me personally, like I haven't taken the course, so I think it technically should be kind of trained in it before you start using it. Like I'm familiar, I've had it like demonstrated in front of me, but I think now just kind of informing the patient, like there's ways that we can challenge you that meets the needs of, increasing muscle mass in a way that's like less intense, and just educating them to give them at least the option. I know we have like aides and techs, or like, I guess sort of like an athletic trainer that could help assist and perform the treatment for them if I'm not certified. Yeah. But I think just for one is just educating them about what the options are, that this is a potential thing that could be helpful.
What application are you seeing in the clinic by the other clinicians right now?
So we have other clinicians who have taken the course. They actually hosted the course before I started at this clinic, like late fall. So people are certified, they're using it a lot with like more sports medicine options, I would say. But I think for sure, like within our team, we have like specialized teams for like joint replacement or falls and balance. And that's kind of what I'm helping with. So it's kind of bringing that up, that when we have this resource that we could definitely use. I think it'd be appropriate for a lot of our patients in that setting or for that scenario.
Have you got to try it yet?
Yeah, so I got a chance to kind of test it out myself, kind of see what it feels like, doing the exercise, like a straight leg raise, or like doing like a step up type of thing. It definitely was more intense than I imagined it being.
Yeah.
In terms of just the discomfort around the leg, it's like I'm trying to think of a patient of mine, like if they're going to respond to like you're set to that, because I mean, they go through it's going to be great, but like the pressure itself was pretty intense. I think someone won't be like, if they're totally surprised by like wouldn't expect it and like, whoa, this is more than I bargained for, but I think it'd go over pretty well.
Yeah. The exercising at a lower physiological load is very intriguing. I guess I haven't seen it in practice, but I'm just thinking of what it would be like to actually implement this with someone that may not be a regular exerciser, that can't handle that type of mechanical load of like a higher rep max. Of just putting them through something like this that is subjectively it's pretty intense. What's that like? How would you go about that?
I'm thinking back to some of the patients that I had, and I don't know if I could convince them of doing this. There may be like one or two that like, okay, that are like pretty gung-ho about trying things, but I don't know. I just feel like it might be kind of hard in an older adult population to convince them of this. Because some of them don't even like exercise to begin with, and then to, do it at this level, I don't know. Yeah. I think it'd have to be some experimenting.
Yeah. It's like, obviously, like I think starting low, like a lower intensity, maybe a lower limb occlusion pressure as well, and a lower weight, lower rep scheme would be helpful. But I think about like, at what point would you implement this? Like Steve, we talked about, like floor transfer and, fall recovery, sequencing isn't something we're going to do on day one. Like there's that sweet spot where, we know that the door's open to where we can really do that and not lose any, trust or reliance with that patient. I think about BFR in the same manner. Like at what point of that rehab, which I know is going to be different for each person, but when's that moment where we can, introduce them to this higher intensity activity to where they're going to like buy in? Do you see any tactics in the outpatient clinic, Steve, that your colleagues use, even with, some of the athletes, like when they introduce this stuff?
I guess for those who have used it, it doesn't really take a whole lot because they're probably into the sports thing and they might have seen it on some kind of media, ESPN, something like that. So it's an easier buy-in because it just connects them to like their sport. I haven't seen it used any of the older patients in our clinic at all. It's all been pretty much younger populations. I think in my thought, is if you can give them a chance to at least try like a straight leg raise at home, give them a chance to see how many reps they can do before they tire out, just to know what it feels like doing a full set of, if you're doing like 15, 20 reps or something like that. And then like ask them, so like, how'd you feel afterwards? Like, could you have done like 30 or 40? Like, if it was intense, did you feel tired or not? But then kind of going back to like research articles, like the Dale Avers article, like say like X%, like if you can hit, this rep max, or you can do this many reps, like likely you could probably benefit from higher intensity. Yeah. And then give them the option that maybe this might be the route to do it, or we have to put on weights or do something to kind of challenge it. But
yeah, that's a good point. I like that, bringing that amazing table from Dale Avers' paper. What did you all think of some of the results? Like, because they just kept like vomiting numbers and all these changes that BFR can have. Were there any in particular that really eye-opening to you all, or particularly applicable to your patients?
I know they use like several comparisons, like some use it like versus just like walking, or some use it with like TheraBands, or some use it like with normal resistance training. And there's a lot of options to use the BFR with. My curiosity is like with the walking. My patients walk, most of them do. But like, how do you dose that? Because I know like in the rep schemes, they say like do like your 30 reps, and then you can get the aerobic, enzymes out, and it's kind of then you're doing their 15 for sets. And like I'm trying to figure out like how would I use that with like just walking like in the clinic. Like I could easily put someone on a treadmill and have them do it, but it's hard to know like how to dose it. I think it's much more applicable with like the basic, like just your straight leg raise. We're doing like a lighter resistance weight exercise. Like that's pretty transferable because we do those things pretty commonly already.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And I haven't read any of the walking articles to see what their methods were. If I were to guess, I think it would be capped at maybe that 5 to 6 minute time frame, like intervals of occlusion. But I wonder how they manipulate like speed and incline or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the tricky part with walking is, I mean, you can do it one limb at a time because, one unit only does one cuff. So to be time efficient, you'd want to have two, $10,000.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy to see those types of results just by walking.
Yeah. Because it'd be simple enough to just kind of convince someone, we're going on the treadmill, we'll try this today. And it's accessible. We have the treadmill, we've got the option. Like we actually have the 2 units we could use. So, I mean, it'd be kind of cool to try it out.
Yeah.
Like, I want to take the course so I can feel more confident in using it, but might try and venture in pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah. And they did speak to safety pretty briefly. Whereas that, because I feel like that's a big concern. I mean, that's what I think about a lot. And that was a big topic in the course. There's 2 guiding questions. They didn't mention this in the article, but 2 guiding questions that they hit on in the course. And that's, are they safe? Is your patient safe for exercise in general? Which almost every patient that we have, especially like in your setting, is definitely going to be in home health. I've maybe have had one person that wasn't safe to exercise. And then the second question was, are they safe for surgery? And that's where it's like, that nicks out a lot of my patients. Yeah. But for you, like an outpatient, I don't know. What do you think?
In large part, like it's hard to like always make the call because like I'm not a surgeon to say like there's certain things, but like I probably have the big red flags I would know of. Yeah. So like in large part, most of my population, like a lot of them are like post-ops, they already had surgery. Or, I mean, they're active community dwelling adults. Like most cases are going to be apt for surgery. So really, from what I can see, there isn't too many roadblocks with my caseload. I think you have a couple of things in here like heat intolerance and like DVTs, alcoholism as like things you might consider not doing it with. Not that I see those things a lot, but I think in general, most of my patients would be applicable for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the big thing I think about is like DVT. But the most common injury, don't quote me on this. I remember this being mentioned in the course. I can't remember if I read this here, but it was just issues with nerve conduction afterwards. Like that is more of a concern for people than DVT actually is. When you look at the data, and that really checked my bias for sure. I'm scared to death of blood clots in my population. Yeah. And it's interesting how in the course they present as well. Yeah. If you think about it, someone's limb is occluded for 45 minutes to an hour, just straight up, no blood flow at all. And, they do.
It's not more than that.
Yeah. And then we come in afterwards and occlude blood flow. If I believe it's a lower extremity, it's 80% of their limb occlusion pressure. And then upper extremity was 50% for, 5 minutes at a time. It's just such so much smaller of a scale compared to surgery. you know. I think that helps put things into perspective of how dangerous this actually is compared to how, we perceive it. So I'm curious, one thing that with the journal that this was published in, it made me really excited because it's geared towards orthopedic surgeons. And that's what I think about in trying to getting the home health company that I work for to purchase some of these units and us starting to use it is, we have to have that relationship with our referring physicians for them to be on board with this stuff, especially with using with the post-op people. So that was encouraging to see. This is a physician surgeon journal where they're talking about BFR. This isn't like just a physical therapy thing. Steve, is there a relationship with docs in your town with BFR, or is this something that y'all are doing on your own?
Well, I'll say my clinic is kind of within a health network where they have like the insurance coverage, they have the physicians, they have everything kind of in-house. Okay. So they are very aware that we have the units. Like we have direct relationships with our physicians, surgeons who refer patients to us. Okay. So I don't know, I haven't talked to them directly, but I would assume at least a select few are very aware that we have them. And they may refer certain patients, but typically like in the sports medicine, like younger population, to use like the VFR. I'm not so much sure that the like total joint replacement physicians would be thinking much about it.
Yeah.
But it could be a topic of conversation, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. At the course where I was, it was a group of clinicians that hosted it. They're heavily associated with the group of ortho docs in town. And I haven't been able to follow up to see if there was a lot of dissemination of that information. Let's say you all get into this stuff, you get certified. How would you go about establishing relationships with those doctors to show them what you can provide with BFR?
Yeah. So I've met one of the joint replacement physicians, like I shadowed him for like a day. So at least I know him already kind of firsthand. And I think, I can easily bring up other patient stories of people in our clinic who've used it. Like, I don't think many of the older patients have yet. Mm-hmm. But even just showing them, like, it's hard to you have to them relate like the research, I think, to the physicians to get them to like buy in more so. Mm-hmm. But something like this article could be like just a topic of conversation, like, hey, it's being used for people that you treat. Like we have it in the clinic, I can easily use this, and just making sense of the intensity level required and what it can do for you.
Yeah.
So it's for us, like we work like next door to the physicians. Like I could easily just walk across the parking lot, see the guy, like set up a meeting, like a lunch meeting or something, at least just to kind of talk about it.
Yeah. Jamie, are you around? I'm curious to get your perspective on this, being the home health veteran.
Yeah, I think conceptually it's interesting. I don't know how feasible on a larger scale we'd be able to implement something like this.
Yeah.
Because you're taking a gamble that you're going to have a lot of patients you can use with it. Mm-hmm. With your agency. My agency has a lot of cardiac patients, a lot of issues. So I don't know if they would fit the criteria for safety reasons.
Yeah.
So I think for the patient, I'm thinking of, the non-operative patient, the non-surgical patient, the one that may have spent a week in the hospital with pneumonia or C. diff or some kind of infectious disease, and then they end up in skilled nursing for 5-6 weeks and are mostly in bed. Yeah. They come home with severe weakness. Really that's that sarcopenic patient who is just wasted away. And that person might, if they're cleared, be the one we would want to target with this intervention.
Mm-hmm. In your experience with trying to sell your services to physicians or programs that you may have, do you have any words of wisdom to say, if you're one to use BFR with some of your patients and you're trying to get your referring physicians on board, do you have any words of wisdom on how to do that, how to establish that connection? Other than buying
for the agency itself or for the referral sources? Let's
do both. Yeah.
Okay. So first I'd start with, when you look at the rate of rehospitalization for your chronically frail patients, the ones, again, that are not complicated cardiac patients that may be in a chronic state of kind of circling the drain, so to speak. It's a horrible thing to say, I guess. But but the person who was functionally independent, the one that was, say, gardening and, community access was no problem, and then they end up being flat on their back for 5-6 weeks, I think you could make the argument that person has a good potential to get back to independent living. But they are such a high risk for rehospitalization because they're so weak and frail that if we don't get them up moving faster and more efficiently, and how long it takes to build up strength using the old methodology of the 1 rep max and building off of that, you might not be successful in keeping that person from experiencing a fall or some other event that puts them back in the hospital. So with agencies that are so more in tune with the potential penalties under bundled payments that they may incur for having patients go back in the hospital, then you can make the argument it's worth the financial investment and the training for the clinicians and the therapists in particular to really evaluate patients that might be benefiting from this particular intervention. Yeah, you could even make the same argument with the referral sources.
Yeah, because they're getting penalized too, right?
Yeah, the hospitals get penalized big time for those rehospitalizations within 30 days, and they continue to expand. So they would be a good place to target. And even in a collaborative way, the skilled nursing facilities that may not be able to do much with a person because of weight-bearing restriction. So then person gets home. Now, again, they've got 6+ weeks of time without gravity on that limb. Yeah. Now, again, they might be at a good spot where we could start to do some more meaningful intervention.
Well, awesome. Those are the big things that I wanted to get your all's thoughts on. Any other thoughts or critiques or anything else y'all wanted to bring up about this pretty awesome summary? I mean, it's pretty.
Well, I was going to say, I think it looks like the bulk of the population was younger with the military grouping at the hospital. And I think they were making a good attempt getting older adults in terms of the studies. It would be really good to see this run through either a systematic review or maybe even a meta-analysis of the actual studies with the older adults to see if there really was anything not only significant in a change, but then that results in better outcomes for functional return or, say, decreased fall risk.
Within probably the next few years, the number of evidence that's going to be coming out is going to be dramatically larger. So yeah, we should probably be keeping our eye out on that coming down the pike. Yeah, it's still, I feel like in the athletes and the younger individuals, it's pretty clear, its effectiveness and its use. But we're still kind of in that gray area with older adults and being able to precisely say this person needs it, they will benefit, it's worth it. So cool. All right. Well, good stuff. Steve, keep us updated on if you, well, I know you probably want to take the course first, but if you take the course and if you start to use this stuff, keep us updated on it, because you're definitely more likely to implement it than I am, unless I just try and buy the thing for $5,000.
Yeah, I know.
Ain't going to be happening.
Investment.
Jamie Lowy knows that I've got an uphill battle to try and be able to use this in the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting way to sell it. Yeah. But I mean, again, I think a lot of agencies still haven't hit the financial pain yet. That's coming in 2020. So it may take a little bit more time and a little bit more research to get some backing behind something that really goes very much on the fringe of what has been done in home health. But then again, that's why we're out there, because we are fringe worthy.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to be part of how I intend to pitch it, is that differentiating factor amongst any other agency in our town, for sure. Because it's rather competitive market. Nothing like where you are, Alyssa, in Columbus. That place is crazy with home health agencies. But yeah, I feel like being able to provide that in the home, because there's already there's an outpatient clinic, a very well-respected outpatient group that's already using it, that we can be that bridge, for a lot of those patients. So
hit me. Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you only listen to these podcast episodes, you are missing out on 90% of the Senior Rehab Project. Hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com, where you can join the movement that's advancing care for older adults. You can join for free or become a part of the Game Changers, where you can get some free gear and access to our monthly meetup. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate y'all, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.